Okay, what's good, everyone? Welcome back to Press Turn. Sorry if I'm a lot more high energy. Things are weird right now, and I'm just hoping that the podcast doesn't kill itself this time in the recording. So we're just gonna go ahead. I'm Sam, and I have with me Derek and David again. Say hi, guys.
Hi guys.
Hello.
I can't believe you. Also, hey, look at me. I'm properly illuminated now. I have a ring light. It's right off to the side, right here. Uh, and it's nice. I have a nice ambiance now. I'm basically a professional streamer.
You should probably save that stuff for date night.
I'm gonna get so many super chats, bits, and shout outs. But anyway, uh, yeah, we're just gonna go right into it. David, take it away, please.
Uh, I've played very little. Pretty much Ghost of Tsushima's new DLC and Stardew. I haven't had much time to play.
Wait, so back up. The Ghost of Tsushima thing, it's a DLC? It's not like a new, I thought it was like a new edition. Or is it like an upgrade if you have the old edition?
It's both. It's an upgrade, but it is also a DLC with a new story arc in a different location. A new island.
Okay.
Well, how was it?
Gorgeous.
Sorry,
It's a lot of fun.
sorry, Derek. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just asking how it was. So is it like an epilogue or like does the story take place after the main?
Yeah, it
Story?
takes place after the main story, and it's pretty much just a new story on its own, probably a lot shorter. I haven't finished it yet, but I've put, I think, 5 or 6 hours into it now, and it's still going. So it's a good chunk of time, totally worth the price.
Interesting.
We
And it's
actually-
available on the PS4, unlike Intermission.
Okay.
Well, I was just about to say, I don't think we've talked on the podcast since you played Intermission. Right?
Well, we talked about Tales of Berseria.
I know, but we didn't talk about the Yuffie DLC, right? Have we talked about that yet?
I don't
I
believe so.
think so, no.
No.
Yeah. Did you beat that already?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my review's up on the site already.
All right, here's my. Well, no, there's no point asking you this. You'll say yes. Here's my dilemma. I played FF7R. I bought it in physical, and I traded in when I was done because I was just ho hum about it. And now I'm like, well, maybe I should have kept it. But I think I'd have to rebuy the physical or the digital edition, and then upgrade. Or I guess maybe I could get the PS5 edition. But it's already beat the whole game. I'm basically paying $70 for just the Yuffie DLC, right?
Yeah, because it's an addition. It's an add-on, so you can't just get it standalone.
So that's not worth it to me. And I don't want to replay. I don't really like replaying games that much. So
Well, if you can find it at GameStop for a lower price, then you're not paying a full 70 for it.
so if I
Um,
found a cheap copy of the PS4 edition, could I still get the PS5 upgrade or whatever,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah,
and then pay for the DLC?
Yeah, the update or upgrade is free. Then the DLC is, I think, $15 or $20.
I assume the base game will go on super sale like a year from now, so maybe I'll do it then.
Yeah.
Is the now this story with Yuffie is like a story that was not in the original, right? It's kind of like a prequel to where she was before, because like you see her earlier.
Yeah, it's a completely new story for that DLC, and it sets up when you find her in the main game, and it has an extended ending for the original or for the base game.
Oh my gosh, I just had a huge epiphany. I don't want to steal what you're. Okay, Yuffie is like a ninja, right? It's been a long time
Yes.
since I played FF7.
Yes.
Pretty much.
But she's also like kind of like happy-go-lucky. Like that was kind of supposed to be kind of like the irony of her character.
Yeah.
I just played. I don't want to talk about everything I played, but I just played Tales of Symphonia and its sequel, which were on the GameCube. So, Sheena from Tales of Symphonia is a complete ripoff of Yuffie, and I never made that connection till just now.
Is she?
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, it's the the spunky ninja, like that's not like a real thing. Also, a female character. There are two of those that I can think of. Those two.
Right.
Plus, that's a PS1 game, and then we're talking PS2 era when Tales of Symphonia comes out. There's nothing new under the sun.
Nope.
Well, I mean,
Okay, well back.
that's been true for a while, but
All right, back. David, was there anything else? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just had this huge epiphany there.
No. It's just it's short, but it's completely worth the money because it's got a lot of things that it's setting up for the future of FF7R, the later installments. So it's a lot of fun.
Have they said anything about if we're getting another DLC episode like this before part 2? Yes
Not
or
that I'm
no?
aware of.
If they do a Vincent episode, that's also like this, like a prequel thing. I will get it. I guess.
I absolutely will.
I guess I'll get it.
All right, Sam, what are you playing?
So not a lot actually. I've been going at it pretty hard with Genshin Impact since the 2.0 update came out. For those of you who haven't seen it, you can watch the episode where me and Anna talk about Asian games at length, as well as Genshin. Basically, it's basically Asian games and then Genshin for like nearly 2 hours on that episode. But
Sounds like Derek's favorite episode.
it could be. We did talk about quite a few of the big games that are coming out, like Black Myth Wukong, as well as Lost Soul Aside, which are going to be like action RPGs for the most part. But we did talk about some RPGs as well, if I remember correctly. So, Derek, you were gonna say something?
No. Well, David said something about that being my favorite episode. I just can't do the gotcha thing with Genshin, but also Anna's into way too many indie games for me to care. She either talks about indie games or Destiny, and none of that is up my lane.
That's
So,
fair.
so you played Genshin. What else did you play?
What else did I play? Well, I was gonna play Splitgate, which is a free-to-play shooter that came out. I believe like over this last week, actually. But I didn't get around
This is
to that.
this is the Portal meets Halo thing, right?
Yeah, basically.
Just reading that description makes me want to throw up because I get motion sick. So
I'm listening.
Fair enough. I mean, the problem is I would have had something to say if I did play it, but I didn't. So, let's see what else. I did step back into Street Fighter V real quick just to get my hands on Oro and Akira, who are the newest DLC characters for their current season DLC.
didn't I read those are going to be the last ever Street Fighter 5 characters?
Yeah. I mean, this is pretty much like this does pretty much feel like the last season DLC. See, the funny thing though was season 4, if you even want to count season 4 actually being a thing, was supposed to be like the last DLC, but then Champion Edition came out, and then with that they announced like this whole slew of a season 5, which gave us Dan, Rose, now it gave us Oro and Akira from rival schools, and there's still a 5th character who is Luke, who is possibly going to be the main focus for Street Fighter 6, I believe. At least that's what rumors are going around for that right now. And yeah, I mean like I don't know much about Third Strike, but apparently from what I've been seeing and reading, people have been saying if you liked playing Oro from Third Strike, he basically operates the same way in Street Fighter V, to the point that it's almost crazy. What I think is the most interesting though is that Street Fighter as a whole doesn't normally have air combos all that much. But with Oro and Akira, um, aerial combos are much more of a thing now in this season. If you go up against those types of characters, which means that they have another optional path for like optimal damage. But again, I can't really speak too much on it. I only tried them out in training mode for like a little bit just to see how they moved and everything. I will say I was probably the most excited about Akira, but I think out of the two of them, Oro was really the more interesting character to try out, just because his playstyle is like very unique. Like in even in Third Strike, he was like the only character who had a double jump in that game, and he's the only character with the double jump in this game now too. I think it's really interesting how one of his supers from Third Strike was turned into a V trigger um, for his inclusion in this game here. So it's pretty cool. Like you kind of see like the new dev leads just trying to kind of like take a lot of this, uh, take like bits from this huge legacy that Capcom has in their banks, and are now like trying to bring it back um, for the fans and stuff, and like try new, like kind of try new different ways to kind of like spin the old and make it feel fresh again. It's pretty cool. Um, I thought I was gonna have a chance to jump back into Strive to try out the new DLC character for that, which is Jacko, but I was not able to, unfortunately, which is too bad because she was a character I really wanted to learn how to play in Exard, but was just way too complicated. It was basically like playing a MOBA, or no, not a MOBA, a tower defense system in a fighting game in Exard. Um, she's her system works a bit more differently now, where she plays a lot like Venom, where Venom in previous Guilty Gear, it was pretty much just like he had traps that he could just put out onto the screen, and then basically he would like try his best to get it on you, and then basically pressure you into the corner by having all these traps set in place. And so that's what it seems like here, is that Jacko's new gameplay design makes her feel more like a pressure character, uh, which I'm not sure how that balances out with the rest of the characters, but I'll have to see. Again, like I said, I haven't played her yet, but I'm really excited too. So, No More Heroes 3, gonna be picking that up tomorrow to work on the article for that, and honestly, I'm really excited. I'm pretty sure I talked about it at length before last time, too. So I won't get too much into that. But I've been hearing a lot of good things from people on Twitter and stuff, so I'm really happy about that. Uh, I feel like it might be entirely possible that No More Heroes 3 could get a PC release in the near future as well, especially considering that No More Heroes 1 and 2 came out for the PC recently as well. Like, I think it basically just came out the month before No More Heroes 3's set release date. So who knows? But other than that, nothing else. I did get back into anime a little bit, and coming in glacial cold, I guess. But I finished the first season of Demon Slayer. Uh, I mean, I know that show was really hyped up ever since it first came out. I just never checked it out. And then I did, and I watched it, and I went, yeah, this is pretty good. Pretty good show. I kind of like it. it's the only issue I really have with it is that I mean I don't know. Wait, hang on. I should probably ask. Have both of you seen Demon Slayer? Do you care about
No,
spoilers at all? Okay.
About spoilers,
no.
because by the time I get around to watching it, I'll probably forget.
I probably won't watch it. So
Well, I won't talk about story details, but what I will say is that one of my biggest problems with that show is that okay, so Demon Slayer is a shonen series. It's basically like the current it's like one of the pushed series in Shonen Jump right now. So with that, I went in expect with a level of expectation of just like okay, it's probably going to be pretty predictable concerning like certain beats and stuff. So I was expecting that. What I was not expecting was that I was just going to get like a fistful of melodrama um, after every cool fight. Uh, and I mean, I don't know. This just might be my personal preferences, or just me being a boomer and finally have to like sit down and ask myself that Skinner question: Is it just am I getting old, or is it the kids that are wrong? But yeah, it. I don't really like how arcs are broken up into fight happens and then you get a little backstory about the villain and then there's the resolution to that fight, which is just like it feels kind of weird to push in the drama after the fight is over. More of the stuff that I'm usually used to, they try to like sprinkle in the drama in between beats of the fight. You know, it's like when there's downtime, that's when you and that's when you put in like the backstory and stuff like that, just to like keep it engaging. Whereas in this case, it's more like um, the Demon Slayer is more concerned about keeping the action continuous and in one package, uh, while the rest of it is saved for after. And I guess that does kind of make sense because there are some people who prefer the action not to be broken up, and I suppose that's fine. But for me, it just didn't really work in this case. But I mean, like either way, I still think it was very entertaining. I'll probably watch the movie next since that basically covers the next major arc. I'm not sure when. Oh yeah, the second season is supposed to be starting in December, but I'm not even sure if I'll even be keeping up with it because that's when JoJo Part 6 Stone Ocean is coming on Netflix as well, and I'm gonna be following that more, really. So that's pretty much it. Derek, go right ahead because what you've been up to is gonna lead into our discussion topic.
okay, well, last time we talked, I had beaten Tales of Xillia 2 and Tales of Graces F, and so I had beaten every Tales game I think that's been released in America at that point, which was my crowning achievement for the year. But I went back. I was like, okay, I have this PS3, and I have like a bit of it soon. What else can I get on here? There was a combo bundle for $20 of Tales of Symphonia and its sequel. So Tales of Symphonia was on the GameCube, and then the sequel was on the Wii. And I played those way back in the day, but it's been like 15 years since I played these games. So I was like, okay, I'll go back and play these. Also because I always argue with Jonathan Floyd about which games are the best, and he always calls Symphonia overrated, which it is really highly regarded as one of the best ones. And I was like, okay, does this game hold up? So I went back and I just finished beating both of those. And Tales of Symphonia is rough around the edges. I mean, it's a GameCube game. This is a different era. I'm discovering that my quality of life tolerance is like PS3 level. PS2 and before is just like so frustrating.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's definitely some stupid stuff. But Tales of Symphonia also, looking back though, was a huge step up for RPGs, like having action-based combat and like having this big sprawling world, and like part of the time you have a free rotating camera, which was kind of a big deal back then. And so it definitely is rough around the edges. It's got too many ideas stuffed into the story, but it was fun to go back to. The sequel was just as bad as I remember. And the main problem is you rehash all the same dungeons, but also like there's two new characters that are basically the protagonists, and they are so annoying. Like very thin personalities, very. Laura Bailey was at the most annoying she's ever been, probably. She did a great job voice acting a very annoying character.
Oh, what? Who was she again?
That's crazy.
Who did she voice?
She was Marta in the second one. So in the second one, there's a character's named Emil.
Okay.
Emil and Marta are the two.
Yeah, I
And
remember that game now. Yeah.
the voice, I mean, it was well done. It was just like the lines were just tedious, and like she's infatuated with the other guy like the minute they meet, and then it's supposed to be this like love story by the end, and it's like, no, you like what a girl put yourself onto you and you were happy about it. That's not a love story. Um, and so anyway, but I beat that like 2 days ago. And even though it wasn't that great of a game, sometimes when you finish a book or beat a game, you're like, now what do I play? So I played like 5 minutes of like 20 different games. I had bought Dark Cloud 2 and Rogue Galaxy both
Ooh.
on. So both of those have PS4 ports that I was going to play on my PS5. So they're like in the PlayStation Store.
Mm-hmm.
But I played them both to the first save point, and they were both like, man, these are choppy. And they're both real-time combat. What I really hated in Dark Cloud 2 was like the camera seems to move like on its own to like quote unquote help you, but half the time I can see my character and the guys that I'm supposed to be fighting are like behind the camera. So I'm like attacking the screen or like having to constantly rotate the camera to like find the bad guys again. It was bad. So I'm more likely to go back to Rogue Galaxy, but both of them were not very inspiring to start.
Okay, I will ask this because so considering how each of those games starts, which one appealed to you more, story wise?
I think both were pretty generic openings,
Yeah.
but Rogue Galaxy had a more interesting setting. And so I
Well,
think
I mean, it is that opening is for the most part pretty Star Warsy, I would say.
well, sure.
Yeah.
But okay, but yeah, you've got Knights of the Old Republic, but as far as like a Star Wars JRPG, there really isn't. I mean, maybe Star Ocean, but
Yeah.
so I at least got as far as like when you get the first save point, this mysterious guy, although I'm pretty sure I know who he is, joins your party, and it's like, oh, who's this guy? Whereas like the first save point in Dark Cloud 2 was like, go vacuum the back room. was basically the instructions I was given. So it's like,
Yeah. No,
maybe I
yeah.
should go check out. Maybe I should go check out Lawnmower Simulator, like LJ was doing this week.
Yeah.
Which I still can't believe that dude got a code and wrote a review for that. Anyway, so I played 5 minutes each of those. I played 5 minutes of Miles Morales, which I should have never bought because it made me the swinging around makes me motion sick, and it did on the first one too. But I thought I was blinded by the hype.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I need to go trade that in before it goes even lower in value. I'm sure it's a great game, but I just don't want to take Dramamine to play a game.
Derek doesn't want to vomit and have to clean it up too.
Yeah, I almost considered taking Dramamine to finish Portal because I never finished it because it made me want to barf so bad. But that was a fantastic game that I'll never finish. What else? I feel like there was one more.
That's sad, especially because the second one is so much better.
Well, yeah, I'm sure it is. And I got to the part in Portal where you're like, you're making tubes to like swing yourself up a staircase. I almost barfed. Like I was very close to vomiting.
Oh, that one. Oh.
And I had to stop. I had to stop there.
Yeah. That's understandable.
What was the other? I feel like there was one more game that I'd spent 5 minutes. Oh, I've completed. I've platinumed Horizon Zero Dawn, and I've done everything in game except the in-game counter is 100%. The platinum, which is separate and kind of different what they're requiring, is also done. But then there's also one more thing that isn't counted in either one, which are these little radio communication things that you can find. And I still haven't found all of those. Well, Horizon Zero Dawn got a 60 FPS update for PS5. And so I was like, okay, I'll go check how good this looks. It looks great, but it doesn't look any different than I remember. Visual fidelity means nothing to me. Other than, like, I can tell something's lagging, But if something's great, looks even greater, I don't see it. Like I have
Uh,
good vision, but I don't know. I don't have an eyeball for beautiful
well, I
game
mean,
resolution.
I will say like not to sell any of those graphics short. I mean, like when you have the devices and you have the monitors or TVs to really take advantage of all of that, a lot of those games look really good. Um, and like now, I know I myself am also an indie connoisseur, so to me, graphics also mean nothing. So this is probably gonna sound really snobbish of me, but for the record, like I don't think I've ever had as fascinating of a visual experience as playing Journey for the first time on a 4K TV. Um, that game blew my mind seeing that on a 4K TV. It was nuts. Like you could basically count the grains on the sand in that game.
That might have been an amazing visual experience, but that's about it because that game was boring as crap. I did
Understand?
play that and beat
Oh
it.
no, yeah, understandably. I mean, like,
But also, like you're right about the equipment, but like I'm playing on my PS5 Horizon Zero Dawn on a LG CX. Like
mhm.
it's pretty good 4K TV.
Yeah, no,
So
that's the
like
thing is like, you're absolutely right in saying that, and that was something I was just about to get into. I just wanted to bring up an example. I am not saying graphics should be neglected. They should absolutely be part of the focus of your game. If your game doesn't look well or perform well, then it's not going to be great. But I think the biggest thing of all is that performance is underrated horribly, especially when it comes to AAA games, because um, and this is more like of a it's a blessing and a curse once you start noticing it. Like when you see consistent 60 frame per second gameplay for a while, and you see how that looks on top of something that um, on top of something that not only looks good but also plays good as well. Like for example, like say if you play Doom 2016 at 60 frames per second, with how well that game plays and everything, and you start getting into like the groove of how that game works and everything's going the way you expect it to, not only do you see it, you feel it uh, through playing the game. And I remember specifically a quote from one of the podcasts I follow, where the guy said, uh, "I would I would gladly take I would gladly give up all these AAA games right now that can't even perform consistently for games um, of PS2 level graphics if they were able to consistently perform at 60 frames per second." That's how bad it is because we never actually reached like a consistent frame rate, even for like the majority of games, even during like the PS3 era. Um, and like even if you could reach 60 frames per second, a lot of those games had to make a lot of sacrifices. For one of the biggest examples is actually Bayonetta, on the 360 and the PS3. Or wait, no, PS3 actually had a lot of problems, but the 360 port actually performed really well. It actually ran at a consistent 60 frames per second, which was really important considering it was a character action game. But the big problem with Bayonetta is that the first game, at least, is extremely linear, and there wasn't really a lot of place to move around. So while you had like um, these really nice set pieces um, and a consistent frame rate to like match the movement and the fighting you were doing at the same time, you couldn't really move around all that much. So it made that game feel a lot more constricted. It was basically just like uh, PS2 Devil May Cry games without the camera switching, pretty much. And the same thing was with Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. On the PS3, that was actually able to hold a consistent 60 frames per second as well, which was crazy because at that point in time, I don't think there were many games that were actually able to achieve that on the PS3 specifically. That was kind of a major problem. Uh, but Revengeance was able to pull it off. The only problem is that that game uh, that game also had to restrict like how much of the environment you could actually interact with, and on top of the fact that there was the Zandatsu cutting system, which basically lets you uh, break physics objects to an insane degree. But the only problem is once it's cut up, they have to fade out those objects, because if they made those last out for longer than a few seconds, it would extremely hamper down the performance of that game if those objects were allowed to persist. Uh, so yeah, I mean, like, it's a big problem, but at the same time, I do understand where you're coming from, where it's like graphics graphics shouldn't matter this much, and I'm more just like I would rather just be in that sweet spot place where we could finally hit a point where it's just like it looks good and it plays good, and it's really difficult to get both. Like with the exception of like some minor bugs. You know what I mean? Um,
Well, see, I'm of the opposite opinion a little bit because I think I'm more concerned about them looking good for two reasons. One is that I don't play many action games, so I'm not super worried about like it, lagging in key moments, because if you're playing like a turn-based RPG, it doesn't really matter. Like, it's not going to like screw up the game that like there's performance issue. But the second reason is I literally just couldn't tell that it was running at 60 frames per second. So if I don't have the iPhone, I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe I need to play it more, and then it's like once you go back, you're like, oh wow, this doesn't feel right anymore.
mhm.
But I've never had enough experience at 60 frames per second for me to worry about it. But anyway, so yeah, I jumped back into that just long enough to realize that I couldn't tell what was going on. I played a little bit today of Cold Steel 4. I'm going to try to go back and do the platinum for that. And I realized how many systems, four games in, on top of the five Trails games before that, they've added system after system. Because when I jumped back in, I was like, I don't remember how to do any of this stuff. And between equipping things and like all the combo systems and stuff, I was like, I've got a lot to remember. But then the last thing I did, which I actually did this earlier in the week, as soon as it came out, I played the Tales of Arise demo. So part of the reason I've been playing all these Tales games to catch up is because they haven't put out a Tales game for 5 years since Tales of Berseria came out, but there's one coming out September 10th, which was supposed to come out last year but got delayed. So I was looking up stuff. It's You're right that most of the Tales games have the same artist, but with Tales of Berseria they added some artists, and one of them is taking over, so it's a different artist than before. It I had a lot of mixed feelings playing the demo. Um, First off, they don't like a lot of JRPG demos. Like, you play the first chapter of the game, and then you can transfer your save, and it's like, just pick up where you left off. Well, this throws you right in the middle of the game, and so it's not transferable. It's basically like, go do a quest to get into this town. So it's not any like story spoilers really, other than you have the whole cast with you, and you learn a bit about their abilities and things. So it was really focused more on combat and like what the exploration is like, and then getting to know the character personalities. But it didn't have any story stuff at all. So, but from what I've seen, one thing about story with Tales is that they've always been like a serious quote unquote story, but always like really corny and a lot of in jokes and a lot of humor with the skits. Even Tales of Berseria, they tried to went darker. There's still a lot of humor with the skits, and Magalu is a character that's just trying to be almost out of place in that setting, trying to be corny and cute. But this one seemed to have not a dark tone but a serious tone, and the graphics were really good. It looked more like a Breath of the Wild type approach to the graphics. but maybe more serious. Not Breath of the Wild, you can still see a little bit of the cartoon edge of Link, like from kind of how they've evolved from Wind Waker and Skyward Sword. But this is more of a serious look. But the two things that surprised me about like the narrative aspects were that every single Tales game, the skits have been with like anime artwork of the characters rather than in-game engine. But here they use the in-game engine, so that kind of took me by surprise because with the different art and the, like more focus on realism, it really doesn't look anime-ish at all. Whereas every Tales game before has had these anime skits, and then like the cutscenes are always just like a full-on anime, full motion video thing. And so it really has dropped that completely, which kind of was jarring to me. Um, and then the voice acting, and Jonathan Floyd told me several of the actors are big name voice actors. One of them, the main guy, he said the main girl was famous too, but the main guy was the voice actor for Aaron from Attack on Titan. But because I watch everything subbed, I didn't know that.
Okay, you've convinced me to get it.
But I can't remember who the girl is. I'll look here in a second. But the voices were more of like a serious approach, which is fine. But like there were a couple skits where they went for humor and it kind of fell flat. But I don't know if it fell flat because the voice acting was stiff, or because they're trying to be serious, or because the things weren't anime-ish, or if it was just because I don't know the characters yet. It seems to me that the best skits in all the old Tales games are either in jokes that are progressively goofier because like you know the characters, and also it's like the fourth iteration of the same in joke, or it's like a poignant scene that's like right after a big event in the game, but there were no big events because this was not really any story stuff at all, and I don't know the characters, so there were no like jokes like by iterating their personalities. So I'm wondering if maybe those skits are just not the best that they have to offer because of those reasons. Um, so I'm hesitant about the character story, but when you beat the demo, depending on the character you choose, it shows you a different like story trailer, kind of centered around each character, and the story trailer really got me hyped. It looked like it looked good. Um, and then the last thing is the combat. So the Tales games, like I said, they had a system that worked pretty well from Symphonia all the way, and then they iterated and added it to all the way through Symphonia 2, Zillia 2, Graces F, Hearts. Most of them were pretty good. And then with Graces F and then the last two, Zestiria and Berseria, they just kept making combat worse and worse. They were trying to change it and just kept screwing it up. Well, Berseria was a little better than Zestiria, but they were bad. I feel like they finally took that system that they had been working on and fixed it. Like it's still got kind of like the action points that go down, and then you can't do stuff like in Berseria, but those are really only for specials. So you just fire away specials, and then when it's gone and refilling, you can do regular attacks. And there's also, if you've played Xenoblade Chronicles 2, there's a thing with the D-pad where you can kind of do special moves like involving other people. There's a thing like that, and I was playing on story mode, so I don't know how deep the combat is if you're like gonna play it on hard mode, but it just felt cool. It felt like the whole time I could constantly, I'm out of this, I can go do this move, and then I can go do that move, and it felt like the whole time I was kind of button mashing, but I had a sense of what I was doing, and it felt like I was able to string together really quickly like crazy combos and juggles and things. The combat was just fun, and for the last two that have happened, Zestiria and Berseria, the combat was not fun to the point where I was putting it on auto battle. So the combat I feel like is probably the best combat they've ever done. So that was a big relief. That was great.
So I wanted to ask real quick, did they keep in that action point system from Berseria?
It's like only for like arts. So rather than having So rather than having like tech points or TP like in the old gold games, it's like basically you can just string arts and that'll go down, and then while it's refilling, you can still do you can do your regular attacks. You can use this other thing on the D-pad where they're like assist moves, where somebody else helps you.
Oh, okay.
So I think I didn't get too deep into it. I think the assist moves like the D-pad is kind of like way back in Symphonia with L2 and R2, you could assign like somebody else's, like you're controlling Lloyd and you have his tech moves, but like if you could like have like Rain's first aid on command. So it's that kind of thing where there's 4 moves that you can like, hey, I need this person to do this move with me. And I don't know if you can manipulate those. A lot of the stuff in the menu was limited. You couldn't like change their equipment and stuff. So but yeah, it felt like even when that thing was depleting and coming back, there were things that you could do. You could still do regular attacks. You could still do these other moves. It felt like you were always like trying to do something. Um, the button mapping was a little weird. They changed regular attack and guard to R1 and R2 instead of like X and square, which I thought was weird because now like the arts, like rather than using the D-pad to switch to different arts, it's like triangle X and O
Wait,
are all or
wait,
triangle square and O or
which one is guard? R2?
R2, I guess.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Cuz
Um,
that's almost Dark Souls.
Maybe that's what they're going for.
With
I
that
don't know.
layout. But guard
I
wasn't
mean, I think
on the triggers. It was on the face buttons.
I think you can change it, but the top three face buttons are different arts. So like when you're doing those action points and triggering the arts, you have like
okay.
you just push different buttons. You don't have to push the stick.
Yeah.
Like before, you'd push the
Oh,
stick a certain way to go with your, which I guess is good that because before the old system, if you want a certain art, you also had to walk towards the enemy a certain way because you had to push the D-pad, the analog stick that way. So, but I don't know.
Simplified fighting game input, shaking my head. Face palm.
Well, so yeah, somebody who's better at games than me that actually plays stuff on hard mode might have a better insight onto whether it's like deep. But for me, it was just fun. I felt like I could like have some intuition about my button mashing, and I never felt like I was bored waiting for a meter to fill up again or something.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I was always doing something.
Yeah. No, I mean
Um,
like it's to me it sounds more sensible, at least because like back back on like the very first Tales game, which I can never remember every time I want to talk about it, even though I have played it.
you mean Tales of Fantasia, or you mean Tales of Destiny, or
Tales of Fantasia, Destiny 2, but basically back when it was on 2D, like it makes sense that they put in like those those D-pad inputs uh, because then it's like okay, it goes from like one special art to another special art, and like certain ones do more damage, so it makes more sense to add those to inputs back when it was on 2D. But now that you're at 3D, it doesn't really make sense to add inputs unless you give them more room and freedom to control the camera everywhere, kind of like in character action games where
you just reminded me.
where you could mess around with that.
See, that's important. You just reminded me of that. It's a big difference. Every game, I don't remember about Visceria, but almost every game beforehand that was 3D, you had to hold like L2 to just run around. Otherwise, you just like ran straight at the enemies. Like
Yeah.
if you had to like free run, now you just move around, and I think you could even move the camera.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's more of like action oriented where you're just moving. I mean, if you attack towards the enemy, but also if you jump mid combat, like you have a separate palette of air attacks, like air specials.
Right.
So there was a lot more. There was a lot more focus on air combo and specials in the air, but also like you could actually just walk around, which is such a silly thing for a franchise that's like 30 years old to be like, hey, you can finally just run around in combat and not have to hold a button. But yeah, I feel like this is the best combat's ever been for them, which is good. So I'm hoping that my reservations about the story will dissipate once I actually like see some actual story, because a lot of these skits I was watching were very introductory. I feel like I don't know when the demo takes place, but it felt like I was watching skits that you would get like the minute you get a party member, and it's like, oh, so what can you do? You know what I mean? Like, oh, I cast spells, yeah, by doing this. Like it felt like those,
Huh.
it felt like those level of skits, and not like skits that are like, where the characters know each other and they're referencing something from an hour before or whatever.
Like
you know.
it didn't really feel like an actual Tales skit.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I don't know, I don't even know if those are in the game or if those are just for the demo, because and so I'm also trying to decide whether I liked or not the fact that the demo threw you in the middle of the whole game. Because one thing I like about demos usually is like, oh, you start at the beginning, okay, well, at least this isn't going to be a waste of time. Like, because I'll just transfer the progress.
So
but I did like, go ahead.
Oh no. Go ahead, finish your thought.
So I did like the fact that here, though, I got to meet the whole cast. Whereas if they'd started me at the beginning of the game, I'd have more stories, maybe that would help, but I'd have like two characters.
Yeah.
But it was enough that I almost went back and played it again. It only took like an hour to play through. There were no save points or anything because It was basically just you just go through and fight this boss, and that's it.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Well, actually, what I have to say does kind of go into our topic. So, actually, before I finish that, do you want to? Is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah. So yeah, my main question was whether when we get into that was like, do I was I happier that it was just like, hey, here's a sampling of everything in the middle, or would I prefer a demo that starts at the beginning? But one other just thing about demos, I also this week I was like, I'm finally going to sit down and I'm going to play the Stranger of Paradise demo, the Final Fantasy Origin, the like Dark Souls Final Fantasy, and I get through all the menus and I go to new game and it's like this demo has been discontinued. Why you gotta play me like that? Some people don't have a lot of time on their hands. I was so mad. Like limited demos. That's another thing that ticks me off. And I remember Monster Hunter Rise had this too, where the demo was only available for like 2 weeks or whatever. What is the point?
Oh, no, no, no,
Uh,
no! It wasn't timed. You could only run it like a number of times, if I remember correctly.
oh, well, that's annoying too, but that's less annoying. If I'm
Okay.
like, okay, you get an hour with this demo and then that's all you get. Well, at least I'd have an hour. I got nothing. I had
Yeah.
it was basically like go uninstall because you ain't getting to play this. That was so frustrating. Okay, so to switch then the like right now because I'm in this place where like I've beaten a bunch of games and I'm itchy and I want to play something, but also like I should just wait for Tales of Rise to come out. But I'm also playing a bunch of demos. I also played the Neo demo some. Like, what do you guys if you're trying to if you're thinking about buying a game, what do you guys want out of a demo? Like, what kind of experience do you want from the demo?
So, what I was gonna say before is that I've I'm not gonna answer the question just yet, but what I am gonna say right now is that I do think it's very interesting as to how um, for certain games there now seems to be a more established structure where it's like before demos used to be like a vertical slice that was actually developed um, ahead of the main game, where it was basically just like the dev team sat down and went like, okay, we need to craft a level that perfectly demonstrates what you're going to be doing and that encompasses like the entirety of the game into this one level and gives you an idea of what it's going to be like, what you can look forward to, how the game works and stuff like that. It,
So to that, oh, go ahead.
like like for all intents and purposes, I would say it's a lot more similar to like a tech demo. Like if you were at Best Buy or something, and it was just like, oh hey, like Samsung released a new folding phone. This one folds from a triangle into a diamond, and then you just interact with it and see like how does it fold into a diamond. Oh, like this, okay, and it's just like, and yeah, here are all the features. Like that's basically what it sounded like. What uh, video game demos were usually like. Um, and you know, like one of the greatest examples of all was the demo the demo for Doom One that had, I believe, 3 levels on it, at least or something, and it was freeware, and you could play that as many times as you wanted to. Uh, but it promoted buying the full game as well. The only problem was with that game, with that demo, it provided too much content. So I think that was like a lesson moving forward, where it was like uh, we can't make the experience too complete, or rather like we can't make it too representative of the actual game itself. It has to be at least like part of something of the game, or just like something that's enticing enough. So I remember it's just like there's a lot of demos I can think of that make me go like, okay, like did this demo make me want to buy the game or not? And there were some that was like not really, and there were only really a few that actually managed to convince me, yeah, I want to buy the game. One of those was another PS2 game. I forget the name though because it's just like the most generic name ever. I'm not gonna bother looking it up, but the point is, so for the demo for that one, it basically is the first mission of that game, and uh, like, should I just look up the name? Yeah, I'm gonna look at the name because it's
While
important that I
while
get
you're
this right.
doing that, you brought up 2 points that I want to address. The first is like the idea of it being kind of a tech demo, well, kind of a middle ground here that I really liked. So another example of something done recently,
Mm-hmm.
Bravely Default 2 had a really early demo. They said this is a non-final version of the game, but actually then they had surveys. They wanted feedback from players. And then towards the right before release, I don't remember if you could transfer save data or not, but they had a demo that was like near pretty much the final product. They were like, "Hey, we listened. Like, here's the differences," and it actually was a vast improvement. So those early like alpha beta demos, like if you're clear that hey, this isn't going to transfer, but like help us, if this part sucks, tell us. I think that's a good idea. But also, you asked, does the demo make me want to play the game? I'm hyped enough about the Tales series that the Tales of Arise demo made me want to play the game, but I think I would be more likely to want to play the game if it's the first chapter. Because, like, okay, you start to play it, and then it gets to the point where it's like, hey, you want to keep going? Or it's, some cliffhanger, like, buy the game, and then you can just keep going. Like, that makes me more like, oh, I'm already committed, right? It's the sunk cost fallacy of time here versus money. But, like, I would fall for the fallacy. I'd be like, well, I already sunk in, I already made it to the first through the first chapter. Like, I might as well see how this ends.
Yeah.
I mean, like, if you ever see like people like preview a novel, like Rhythm of War, or maybe it was Oathbringer, but they had like the first like 30 chapters because it's like a 130 chapter book. But like on
Oh
the on
wow.
the publisher's website, they had like the first like third of the book online. And you just read it, and then it's like, oh, you want to know more? You got to buy the book. But like, they're not going to show you the middle 30 chapters of a book, right? And be like, oh, you should read more. Like, I think I'd rather have the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh, I think that's a very interesting case for sure, especially when it comes to like um, visual novels or JRPGs where the focus is more on the story. I mean, like, um, actually, you know what? I can think of one demo recently that where that actually worked on me. Monster Hunter Stories 2. That completely worked on me, and the demo for that game basically just lets you play through the prologue, and then gives you just enough missions to just be like, okay, like here's okay, we're just gonna leave you, we're just gonna cut you off at the next beat of the story, and then you have to decide if you want to buy it or not. And I bought it right there, basically. I mean, of course, I did enjoy the game, so that is another factor of it too. That is a very, but that is a very enticing pull to at least give you the start of the story and then decide for yourself, is it interesting enough or not. And if it is, then at least you don't have to play through it again. You can just continue on from where you left off. I do think that only works if the game is coming out soon and not like a month beforehand or something like that. Um, because if there's too much time between the demo and the game actually releasing, then like at that point, some people would probably just go, well, I don't know if I'd want to continue playing because I don't even remember what happened, um, and I don't want to take that time to go through the story again anyway. So yeah, I mean like I think it does work. It's just that like it's very tricky to use that type of format for all demos. Like I don't think it really works for every genre in my opinion. But
Well, related to that, I think the only reason, thinking about this now, I think the only reason Tales of Arise did this thing in the middle was so that they could show off the full craziness of combat. Because if you start at the beginning and you've got like two characters, then a lot of the stuff and you've got like hardly any skills, then you're not going to be able to get as wild as the boss battle I fought. like I had 4 different characters I could summon for help, and I had like a dozen different arts that I could do. And so if that's part of the draw, they're trying to get people like, hey, look how much we've made combat better. Then and you start beginning and you can't hardly do anything yet. Then maybe that was their logic. So my point being, like a genre that's more focused on like an action RPG is more focused on like the gameplay might want to do that in the middle because like here's all the cool weapons you can get rather than like show the beginning where you start out with nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. I'm trying to think if there was any demo. Well, I mean, like, didn't um have any of you ever played well, what was it, a beta of Diablo 3 or something like that? Cuz
Nope. I was really late to the party on Diablo 3.
I'm trying to remember if Diablo 3 came out with a beta or a demo of some sort, because I know there was a thing where it was like for a while betas were more the norm rather than demos. But the problem is when you talk about a game as if it was a beta at that time, it made it sound like you could keep your progress. Um, but later, as time went on, it became more accepted that you shouldn't assume that your progress will be saved for betas. Even though I think there are still some people who say it shouldn't be like that, but to me it makes more sense now than it used to.
Beta to me, that word, whether it's fair or not, I don't know, but it implies multiplayer to me.
Hmm.
So like an early build of like a JRPG, I would assume they would just call it an early demo rather than a beta.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's the other thing too, is that usually um when you talk about like a game or software that's in beta and you're like sending it out to the world for people to try out, usually what that means is that um you're trying to get feedback on things that people like and things that people don't like and see if there's anything you can improve on that. Unfortunately, that's usually not the case uh, with a lot of these betas. Like uh, for the most part, I'm going to say not many of them take advantage of a free player base, essentially bug testing for you and effectively fixing anything major. Um, the only the only game I can really think of off the top of my head right now is actually Neo, because that game, up to that game's release, there were like I think 3 or 4 beta tests that were happening at the same time, and these were timed. And I know in this case it does fall into the category of not really being a proper demo. But what was interesting about that was that um, on top of making them timed, you did people did notice that with each new beta test, they implemented changes based off of feedback from the previous one. So when the first one came out, and what like it came and went, and then when the second beta test came around and people started playing again, people who played the first one noticed, oh wait, they implemented a lot of changes from the first one, and then that kind of that actually bolstered people's faith in the dev team, which I believe was Team Ninja, that they were actually going to deliver a quality product for Neo once it finally released. And then uh, like by the time that game's DLC and everything finished, it was like highly regarded for open and earnest feedback, and the dev team listening to the players, fixing things, adding new stuff to it that they didn't even ask for, and stuff like that, and garnered a lot of goodwill for the uh, group, which was great. And obviously they used that into Neo 2, like using all that good faith and using it effectively going into Neo 2, and pretty much using the same format with that one as well. So I think that's a more interesting case of how a beta demo, to be exact, is used effectively, um, as like I guess like objectively as somewhat of a marketing tool, as well as a troubleshooting tool, but I think more interestingly as a way to establish and grow a community around a game, um, and like Neo 1 and 2 aren't. Oh no, wait, no, they have multiplayer. What am I talking about? So yeah, there's multiplayer in that too, but it wasn't multiplayer focused. That was my main. That was what I was going to say about that. Uh, I think that's cool, but yeah, yeah. I don't know though. Like in terms of demos, I'm more okay with a vertical slice when it comes to certain games. Like I think it's okay to do that for a shooter or an action game. Um, but in terms of games where like you're gonna be sitting and reading, or sitting and watching like a scene, then maybe a demo that actually that's just like the introduction to the game itself could be interesting. But then it's like in that case, then it's like is there even really a point to releasing a demo at all then? Like, oh no, am
Well,
I thinking
I,
anyway?
I would say any demo is better than no demo. I really
Yeah.
wish especially on Switch, I wish there were more demos because my daughter always has money burning a hole in her pocket. She's always wanting to look at new games, and I'm like, I'm not buying a $60 game without you like that you've not played. And so like usually if I get a demo, I can see if like she's like, hey, I really want to do this, or if she loses interest,
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes in, and then, um, and I'm frustrated with the number of Nintendo titles that don't have demos. Like I really was hoping Skyward Sword would have a demo just so I could get used to the controls,
Mm,
but there was not one. It makes me kind of curious how they decide when to actually have a demo and not, because it seems like it's not that difficult to have the demo just be start at the beginning of the game and until the first you know checkpoint or whatever chapter. Like that seems relatively easy to do. Not that I'm a programmer, and so I'm trying to understand to what extent there's got to be research on this, but there's a risk when you make a demo where people are like, oh, actually, this sucks and I'm not going to buy the game. But I've got to assume overall that demos are more likely to increase sales. So, by that logic, for an average, sales go up. Like, all games should have demos. I don't understand why so few
absolutely,
do.
absolutely. I mean, I will say this from my personal experience. Um, Even though it's a touchy subject to talk about, I have pirated games in the past, and I've emulated games as well. I know that's a dicey subject to talk about in this space, but personally, I just feel like I would like I would rather just get a demo for almost every game just to see if I like it or not, because I don't want to, and especially because like if you buy digitally, you can't refund the game if you don't like it or not, or at least
What?
like at least not on PC. At least on PC, it's easy to do that, but on most other things, like there's a lot of steps to it, um, where it's like,
That's what I was gonna say is that because
yeah,
Steam has that 2 hour policy, like not that Nintendo would never do that in a million years, but if Nintendo and Sony had this kind of policy, like every game would have a demo if you were able to return it for full refund if you played it less than 2 hours, like on
yeah,
Steam. So, like, that would kind of solve the problem, I guess. Although, I read an article this week that there's an indie developer that made a game that's like 2 hours long, and he said he had to quit making games because everybody on Steam played it, beat it, and then returned it because they beat it within 2 hours.
hmm,
So he made like zero money off of his game,
yep,
which is kind of sad.
yeah. It unfortunately is, and like that sucks to hear because like it's not that guy's fault for making that for making a game how he wanted to. I mean, I don't know. Like you could argue that he didn't have enough foresight to actually think about that, but at the same time, he shouldn't have to worry about such a stipulation. Um, I think, but for me personally, I feel like demos are really important to understand what you're getting into with some games because I mean like as it is right now, a lot of like most games are usually front loaded anyway. Like they're front loaded with some of the most interesting set pieces of the entire game. Um, until like the finale of the game, obviously. But it it does cause a problem where it's like you pick up a game, you think you're gonna like it after like the first 2 hours or something, but then once it hits like that third or fourth, and then you're kind of just going like, man, things are kind of slow, or it's not as exciting as it was at the beginning. Obviously, I'm not saying like it should be exciting all the time, but I am saying like there should be at least like a majority of the time you spend playing a game should at least keep you engaged and to some degree. Like there shouldn't be a point where you're just like, okay, I'm at a point in the game where I'm basically doing the same thing again, and I have no interest in keeping like watching it. So I'm gonna go to my phone or my computer and put on a video or something to have that on the side just to keep myself occupied. Um, I feel like I feel like especially if it's like a single player experience um, that's really problematic because what that says to me is that you've now lost a good portion of engagement from your player, um, who only wants to passively interact with the gameplay now. Um, at least that's how I think. Of course, I mean like I'm guilty of that to some degree as well. When I'm playing Genshin Impact, I'll usually have a video on or something because I'm grinding, and grinding isn't really fun to just sit there and watch. Uh, like at once you're on your like 40th hour of grinding that you've done before, or for MMO players, like your 100th hour of fishing or crafting or whatever. But and it's kind of different for games like that because they're intended to be like lifestyle games or like games where it's like you play a little bit at a time. But yeah, like especially for single player games, there like there shouldn't be a point where you feel like completely disengaged unless it's like your favorite game and it's like your fifth time playing it or something like that. Like that's what I mean. It shouldn't be happening the first time you're going through it. Hopefully that made sense. It was a bit of a ramble and I apologize, but
David, what do you want from a demo?
Not nearly as deep of reasonings as you two. Pretty much just a good example of the gameplay itself and ultimately what to expect from the game. I hardly ever play demos, but I think the one that impacted me the most was for Infamous, the first one, because I replayed that over and over until I could afford to actually buy the full game, and it convinced me to buy the game because the demo was so much fun.
Some dog clearly disagrees with your opinion on demos.
Yeah,
Was barking
Yeah,
mad.
He's giving us a demo of his capabilities.
yeah, pretty much. Someone happened to be walking by the house.
I've decided I'm not going to buy a dog, so I'm glad that we had the demo.
Oh, just don't get an overprotective shepherd. Although, she's a great dog.
Dogs are cool. Cats are cool too. We support all animals. That's fine.
I don't support bears.
You could, but yeah,
Rather
no,
not.
don't consider a bear as your first pet. At least that's gonna be it for us today. Bit of a short episode, but I'm desperately hoping that nothing terrible happens right now with the recording. So yeah, that's gonna be it. Thank you everyone for watching. As always, continue to like and subscribe. Shut up. I'm gonna keep doing it. I don't care. This is engagement. And I want to improve. So deal with it. Anyway, on that note, have a good one, guys. Take care of yourselves.